So that process is something we've put in place, and I think it's clearly beginning to demonstrate, at least at the leading edge indicators, that we're seeing improvement. It's been a major upheaval, and I'd be the first to admit that a year ago, morale in our discovery organization was not very good. In fact, it was terrible, because people didn't know what was really going to happen, and they weren't sure what their role was going to be. And to be fair, many of the people we had in the discovery organization left in the period of change, either through their own volition or because they were not up to operating in the kind of way that I've just described. Today, a year or so later, I'll be honest with you, I'm shocked at how fast this has bedded down. Because actually, giving people freedom, giving people the tools, and letting them get on with it is exactly what most scientists want to have. And that has encouraged them to drive forward their innovative thinking. Now, if I look at some of those early surrogate markers, I could easily tell you that we're synthesizing more molecules than ever, that we're on more targets than ever, and that those targets are progressing better than ever. And that's all true. What's much more interesting to me is when I visit the laboratories, is just to see some of the more qualitative examples that innovation is improving, both in terms of quality and frequency. And I'll give you just a few snapshots of that. 2 weeks ago, I was in North Carolina, where we have 3 of our discovery performance units. One of those discovery performance units has a target in hepatitis C. And in fact, 6 months ago, we acquired a company on the west coast of the US, a California-based company specialized in hepatitis C. And we acquired that company for the target, and we offered 12 of their 20 employees a job at GSK. They're all great scientists. To be honest, I didn't expect any of them to join. Because once you've been in startup biotech California, the notion of working for a company like GSK may not seem like the most obvious next step. Those people all joined GSK, and when I was over in the States a couple of weeks ago, I met with that team. What was striking to me and very reassuring to me was that not only those people joined, they described no difference between working in West Coast biotech startup and GSK Discovery Performance Unit. That's an example for me that we're beginning to get the culture right in terms of innovation in a big company compared to where you would classically expect to find it. A second example would be a recent visit I had to our stem cell research DPU looking at muscle wasting. How do we delay or reduce the rate of muscle wasting as people age? That actually is a tremendously exciting area, driven from the partnership with our academic partners at Harvard and now being prosecuted within our discovery performance units. What was terrific on that particular day was that I had to almost separate 2 scientists in the battle they had between themselves to show me the data. They were so proud of what they'd achieved. What was striking was that one was a biochemist and one was a biologist, and 18 months ago they would have been 600 miles apart in the US. Today they co-locate, they work together, and they truly are sharing the project rather than defending their silos. And the third example I'll give you is from Stevenage, where maybe a month ago I spent some time with one of the oncology discovery performance units. And they described to me how they were proud of a breakthrough they'd made to lock a particular molecule onto a target. But it had taken them 3 years of frustration to actually make that breakthrough. They knew they had the target, they believed they had the molecule, but they could not lock the molecule down onto the target. And they said, we've done it, we've done it. And I said, well, what changed? What suddenly allowed you to make this happen? And they said, because for the first time, we had the chemist and we had the molecular modeling IT scientist sat next to each other in the same lab. Whereas previously, one was at Stevenage and the other was at Greenford. And they had to schedule meetings to talk to each other. It so happened that one guy was looking over the other guy's shoulder, figured out the solution to the first guy's problem solved. That's what you have to try and create. Those 3 examples for me are clearly qualitative, but actually for me much more compelling of the progress we're making than any set of statistics or numbers, and convinces me that this solution is a solution which will absolutely work for us. Now, the third big area of innovation I talked about, beyond innovating the way the company operates a business model, beyond the core discovery, is of course the way in which we interact with customers. And that's where in the UK I think there is tremendous scope for continued challenge and improvement, as both the NHS as it continues to evolve and also in the way in which a company like GSK needs to evolve. What do I mean? It means we need to move on from the status quo that we've had for the last 20 years in terms of sales forces calling on doctors, in terms of soundbite promotional messages, and we need to move forward into much more shared approach. Companies need to be much more flexible on pricing, as I've been on the record many times to say. Government needs to be much more flexible to negotiate price around the advice of NICE and everything else. Those are mechanisms of flexibility we need to start to recognise. It's obvious that total funding power of the state or any healthcare system is not infinite. It's equally obvious that patients want to have access to innovation. And of course, it's obvious that companies who are involved in innovation want to have markets. That requires a level of maturity of dialogue which we need, which I think the UK is demonstrating a leadership position of building at government level, and we need to replicate throughout the entire system. There's some great examples of leadership here. Places like the Salford PCT, there are areas in the southeast, similarly all over the country, there are great areas. The question is, how can we continue to make forward progress here, break down some of the barriers and perceptions of the past, ensure that people earn the right to be at the table, not least people like us, that we earn the right to be trusted around the table and behave in a responsible manner, and that as a result we focus on the only thing that's really important, which is that we improve the quality of healthcare for patients. How do we ensure more patients get more access to better healthcare so that they can fulfill a fuller and longer life? And that's the third area which for us is truly worth focus for innovation. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. I appreciate it very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.